What's up, my beautiful people? Welcome back to the War Room. I am here with my team today. Malissa Smith, she is a women's boxing historian, and my boy, Eddie Goldman. We call him the conscience of combat sports, and this is Sports Justice Radio. Welcome to Angry Afro Radio. So, the top of the story, we cannot begin this segment without the biggest news of the year, and that is BG, that's Brittney Griner, being released in an exchange, a prisoner swap today, after being detained in Russia for, I don't know, since February of this year. And Russians claim she brought hashish oil in her luggage to a Moscow airport. And then in August,
1 gram.
1 gram.
Less than 1
gram.
In a canister with her jewel.
Right. And then in August, she was sentenced to 9 years in one of the most harshest penal colonies in Moscow, like 300 miles southeast of Moscow. So she was released today in exchange for a guy who they call the Merchant of Death, Victor Bout. He's a Russian arms dealer, and Putin got his boy back, and we got our Brittney Griner back. So guys, it is a fantastic day. We're very happy for Sherelle Griner and Brittney's family. So let's talk about this. It's big news today. The Biden administration is just kicking ass and taking names, and we love it.
We love it. And yet, there's these right-wing pigs are out there screaming, how could you do that? Bring her back. It's because she's Black. It's because she's this. It's because she's that. Give me a friggin' break. The woman was there for 10 months. She deserved to come home.
That's
Get
right.
Your racist crap out of this.
That's right.
We bring home our own.
That's right. American citizen. She needs to be home, and she was illegally detained.
Right. It was obviously a frame up. I don't believe for a minute that she had even the little bit of cannabis oil or whatever it was in her luggage when she was going to Moscow. I mean, we've talked about this before. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She's been a WNBA star. She's used to traveling all over the place. And I used to do a lot of traveling, not as anywhere as much as Brittney Griner did. But she's used to traveling, and people that are used to traveling know all the crap that you have to go through at the airports, at the check-ins, which you can and which you cannot bring. There's all sorts of things that are otherwise legal that you can't bring with you. For example, if you want a pair of scissors, if you want to just cut your hair or some clothing or something, you can't bring that because they'll confiscate it. You can't bring a certain amount of body oil. There's a limit on that. So she knows all this stuff. You're going to tell me she goes to Russia with this in her bag? I don't believe it for a minute. I believe she was targeted, and I think the U.S. government is saying it. They'll probably speak more about it when she's home and safe, and speak more forthrightly about this whole case. But she's a Black lesbian activist who, during the George Floyd demonstrations, wouldn't, and other times wouldn't stand for the national anthem. The right wing, the racists, and Putin, these people hate her because she's everything that they're fighting against in terms of society. And in terms of this trade that took place, it was an unequal trade. That was because Putin held all the cards. He was the one that was decided. The U.S. was more than willing to make a trade. They wanted to get Paul Whelan back, and the Whelan family acknowledged that they understood that this trade, it was either getting Brittney Griner back or getting nobody back. Mm-hmm. So they had a very difficult decision to make, and the U.S. wants to get Whelan back. But the Russians have accused them, probably falsely, of being a spy, and the Russians wanted a spy back, and the U.S. said, we don't have any Russian spies. Maybe they should just grab a few, if the Russians want to play like that. But It was absolutely necessary to be made. And these fascists, these QLP Republican racist scum are saying all this stuff. Well, Whalen was grabbed by Russia when Trump was in office.
Mhm.
Why didn't he get him back then? If he's
Exactly
complaining
right.
about it, needs people complaining about it now. The reason is because he's Putin's pet, and he does what Putin wants. And yet Joe Biden and his State Department and his officials were able to pull this off. But there's also like a broader some broader lessons about this. No athletes should go to Russia to
None.
compete because
None.
you are a target. And particularly, as I said, somebody like Brittney Griner, and is also very well known and high profile. I'm not a basketball fan, but I knew a lot about her before this, and a lot of people knew a lot about her.
But there's one other part of that broader story, though, that should be pointed out. The reason she went to Russia was she was going to play basketball in their professional league. And the reason why is because she was going to make a lot of money.
Right.
Money she does not make here in the United States, the WNBA. She was going to make 4 times what she makes during the on season here to play basketball off season in Russia. This is not that she has played there in the past. It's how she's able to afford her life.
I know, but are Russian players being paid more than the European players? Like,
I'm not
folks
certain
out
of those aspects of it, but I do know that American basketball stars who are brought over to play are earning much better money than they earn
Right.
here in the United States.
Couldn't they
and
earn
that's
it
why
in
she was there.
Couldn't they earn it in other European countries too?
I don't know that answer
because
either.
there are European basketball leagues that are not the caliber of the NBA or the WNBA, and so when they get one of these top stars, one of these all stars, it really adds a lot of prestige to them, brings in a lot of fans, and I don't know the economics of this whole thing. So yeah, they're probably overpaying to get prestige. This is what the Russians are doing to build up their sports program, to overpay to bring her there. So yes, that is a real problem. But there's a real trade-off. This should be a lesson. Don't take this money because it's gonna backfire. And this shows in general that Russia is not dealing in any kind of civilized way in the sporting world with Olympians, with professionals, or even amateur athletes. And it's Vladimir Klitschko, former world heavyweight champion, has said, ban Russia, ban all these Russian athletes. And you just had Bach, the president of the IOC, criticizing the British government for keeping Russians out of the Wimbledon tennis tournament. Well, you know what? I'm not a fan of the Tories or anything, but I agree with them that they should have kept the Russians out, because what you're doing is letting these Russians come into the tournament, make a lot of money, and bringing a lot of money back to Russia. And the U.S. is letting these Russians play in the NHL, in the U.S. Open, the tennis tournament in Queens. They're letting these Russians come in. I say ban them all. So long as this is going on, you cannot allow that. You cannot appease them and say we'll be nice to them. They want to play hardball. You play hardball back. That's the only way to do it.
No, I agree. I also thought that I was wondering, like, Russia went to war. Why are we sending athletes to Russia? That just seemed to me the most ridiculous decision, to step into a country that's at war with somebody else and you're becoming a target, because Putin is looking for people to detain and trade. And like, I think Whelan was supposed to be traded from Maria Butina, right? Or she served her back in the day. So yeah, it's
that didn't happen. She got traded for someone else. And
she got traded for someone else.
Yeah. So, Whalen, it's an unfortunate situation. He's an ex-Marine. He's accused and quote unquote convicted of espionage, whether, who knows That's all
But
crazy.
he's got the perfect profile. He was a security manager. He's
exactly
got 4 or 5 citizenships. He's, this guy was a perfect target.
He was certainly a perfect target.
Yeah.
BG was not a perfect target.
BG was not a perfect target.
All about headlines and all about tweaking the United States. A 6'8" black lesbian woman. Right. Are you kidding me?
Right.
She didn't even have a bed she could sleep in. I mean, it's just horrible. So yeah, to your
they shaved her.
Yeah, they shaved her head. You saw that in pictures. She, she had these beautiful dreads and everything. And when you saw her on the tarmac this morning, those photographs, she has just a little bit of hair now.
Right.
Shaved her head off. So, and that was between when she last was in court, when she lost her appeal, to now. So they shaved her head when she got to that penal colony. That happened. Yeah, can you imagine just that trauma alone, losing her hair?
Right.
Jesus Christ. I'm sorry.
Russia under Putin is the worldwide leader in promoting white supremacy. He's openly spoken against liberal democracy, saying we have to get rid of that. They're passing all these laws against so-called gay propaganda in Russia that are being almost unanimously passed in the Duma, the Russian legislature, that's supported by Putin's party and other parties, including the Communist Party in Russia. And Brittney Griner was a symbol of everything in the West that they're fighting against. Right. So I think people should understand that, and there should be no sports relations with Russia so long as they're doing the shit, so long as Putin is in power. You cannot do that. There's no basis for having sporting events, peaceful sporting, friendly competitions under the rules of sport, be it basketball, boxing, wrestling, and any other sport that you could name with this country. They're known cheaters. They had the state-sponsored doping program that was exposed. They covered that up. They're still trying to cover that up. They doctored the data from the Moscow lab. There's a long, long history. If you're not familiar with it, you could look up and you could read. This is a completely rogue regime. There's no basis for having common sporting activities with this regime. And it's not necessarily the athletes. The athletes are stuck. They have to compete under these conditions. Either they go along with it or they don't compete at all. It's a really horrible choice for these elite athletes. But for the other countries, they could say, we're not going along with this crap.
Well, and I got to tell you something, just this Monday in Russia, the Duma passed an expanded anti-LGBTQ laws in Russia that makes it illegal to quote unquote promote any kind of LGBT relationship or any outward sign of that. So if you're walking down the street with a hat that's got a rainbow on it, you can be arrested and thrown into prison for a very long time. So this is very, very, very serious. And the international sporting world has to immediately ban any kind of interaction on sports, because this is an anathema. It's absolutely horrific. And the expansion of this is also making it creating it as quote unquote propaganda. And they've also expanded their foreign agent rules and laws. So again, if you're a visiting athlete and you again wear your little hat with your rainbow on it, you'll be in prison. You're going to be where BG was, only it's going to be even worse. So
they essentially created a "Don't Say Gay" bill in Russia.
I don't say gay bill in Russia.
Don't be
anywhere.
Gay. Right.
Don't be. Well, they've already had
worse,
"Don't Be Gay."
Much worse than that. Much worse than that.
Yeah.
It's
as bad as that shit is. It's much worse than that.
Any outward expression. So you walk down the street and you are too close to a person of the same sex, and you have a rainbow on you, or any outward expression where someone could claim it's gay, quote, or trans or anything, you will be thrown into prison for a very long time. Well, and subject to really horrific treatment. So that was just this Monday. So Eddie's call to say end all sports with Russia has to happen. That has to happen. You cannot expose athletes from anywhere to that kind of behavior, to that kind of
right
horrific representation.
Well, here in the United States, in Little Russia,
Yeah,
aka Florida,
yeah.
the lawmaker who created the Don't Say Gay bill, guess what? He was just indicted. He's going for money laundering, wire fraud. So, you know, corruption is everywhere. These
corruption is everywhere, absolutely. And yeah. But to Eddie's point, we, you know, war in Ukraine, that's one thing.
Right.
Doping, another thing. But now, with this LGBTQ expansion of anti-LGBTQ laws, it's horrific.
Right.
And the IOC is on the block is sending signals that they want to find a way to reconcile with Russia while all this stuff is going on, while Russia is still bombing, or during the cold Ukrainian winter, bombing all the electrical and communications and all the infrastructure there. They want to reconcile with them. So at their Olympic summit, they invited the leaders of the Olympic committees of the U.S., China, and Russia, and they're trying to find a way to bring Russian athletes back. I don't think there's any way to do that other than capitulating to Russia, because how are you going to tell who's for and who's against the war in Ukraine? It's illegal to speak against the war in Ukraine in any way, to even criticize Putin on that, even the conduct of the war in Russia. So the athletes have to keep it on the down low about that. So how are you going to know who's for and who's against that? And even if they show up at a rally, who knows if they were really forced to show up at these rallies? The same way with these trials, the White House said described Brittney Griner's trial as a show trial that happened in the Soviet era, where you had to make a, quote, confession and explain these things in order to try to get off, which usually, by the way, did not succeed, just gave them more propaganda. But you cannot compromise. You cannot appease a regime like this. This is a fascist regime. It has its own particular ideology that's historically different from Nazi Germany, but in essence, they're playing the same role in the world today as Nazi Germany did back in the 1930s and World War II. So there's only one way to deal with that, is to fight it by every means available, and to prevent them from launching a nuclear war or another war. They're still threatening nuclear war in Ukraine because they've been getting their asses kicked in Ukraine. All they can do is send Iranian drones and bomb from the air, because on the ground they've been getting destroyed. They got thrown out of Kherson, and they're going to get thrown out of other places. And that's why the West should give more and more weapons. Everybody should support the Ukrainians in their fight. They're a democratic country. They're not, you know, they have their own political divisions there too. President Zelensky recently made some criticisms of Kiev mayor Vitaly Klitschko, another former heavyweight champion. It's a democracy, so yeah, there are going to be differences there. But that's what goes on in a democracy. Unlike under Putin's dictatorship, they should be supported and they should be kicked out. And I'm hoping, and I think we should fight for the IOC to kick out the IBA and the pro-Russian IBA, that is basically a tool of Putin, that is the one international federation that is openly bringing back athletes from Russia and Belarus under their own flag. They're not going through this pantomime of saying they're neutrals and letting them come in a uniform in the colors of the Russian flag, and everybody knows they're from Russia. But they're bringing them back openly. And they have to be kicked out of the Olympic movement, and there has to be work to, if boxing is going to survive. The IOC hinted at that they're not against boxing per se as a sport. They're not against the boxers. They're against what the IBA has been doing in terms of its governance, its financial situation, particularly being dependent on Gazprom, the Russian energy giant, and the refereeing and judging. And so hopefully there can be a new international federation formed, free of Russian control, hopefully in time for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, because I think having boxing on the program in Los Angeles will be one of the more popular sports. We know boxing is popular in the California and Southern California for a long period of time, and it does relatively well on the TV ratings also. And so when it's in Los Angeles, the ratings in the TV, you'd be able to show it live in the United States instead of dealing with time zone problems when they've been shown, in China and places like that. We either show it in the middle of the night, or you stream it live, or you show it on tape delayed where people in the U.S. can watch it. So if that's going to take place, work has to go really quickly to create another federation, which I don't know if that could be done that quickly. And I don't know how many you need to have enough countries involved to create a viable international federation. There might be a couple of dozen countries whose boxing federations are willing to leave IBA and form their own, but I don't know how many that would be. And I don't know that the IOC would accept that and would take some time. And as we've seen also, Kremlin is throwing money around all over the place. They're running their so-called World Boxing Tour. They're doing pro fights of 7 and 5 rounds, which are pretty much the same as what the failed World Series of Boxing did. And they're running shows in Abu Dhabi, and which leads me to believe that Abu Dhabi is giving them some money and supporting them and funding them by bringing these shows in. Because who the hell, professional boxing has a hard enough time getting fans and people to watch it. Only on the very, very top level does it make a lot of money. Below the very top level of elite fighters, there's a huge drop off. Now you're going to have these amateur fighters in IBA calling them pros. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to want to watch that? It's not viable unless you have somebody that's willing to just throw money at it like Russia is, and now apparently the UAE is doing. So IBA is also planning for life beyond the IOC. They're constantly attacking the IOC, and if you know anything about the IOC, it's like an old boys club running that thing, and they do not like at all to be criticized. It's very autocratic, and you only make things worse by criticizing them. So in the time that I briefly worked with the International Wrestling Federation, which is then known as FILA, I really saw how this chumminess goes on in the Lausanne area. These people hang out together, they have dinner together, they drink with each other, they do all this stuff together, they're involved in corruption together, and IBA is not part of that. They move most of their operations out of Lausanne to Moscow because that's what they're planning to do, to run something separate. I don't see how it's going to work unless they're going to have somebody just willing to throw money at them and fund them. But I just think that a new federation has to be built up, and in the countries we're in, we have to encourage those federations, including USA Boxing, to disaffiliate with IBA and work with other boxing federations to create a new non-corrupt, if that's possible, International Boxing Olympic Federation.
Has the USA Boxing come out and said anything about the IBA's?
Well, yeah, they're highly critical of Kremlin and the IBA.
But I mean, like separating themselves from the IBA.
Not publicly, not yet.
Publicly, and it's. I don't really see how that's going to be particularly possible right now, because 2/3 of the members of the IBA are firmly behind Kremlin. And in part, it's because he's throwing all this money
Yeah,
around
he
to
has
small companies.
Malawi and
Yeah,
Saint Lucia and all
Africa.
these tiny
Small
countries.
countries.
He threw a lot of money at Uganda. He's throwing a lot of money in building these academies, with the exception of Cuba, because he got support. Since he has support of Russia, he also gets support of Cuba. Most of them have done nothing in Olympic boxing. They're just federations.
They're just federations. They really don't have the talent necessarily that can rise to that level of elite talent in any of the trials to get into the Olympics. They're not winning medals even, in any of these, it's only in the regional tournaments that they're winning titles. The other thing too is, he's made this relationship with the WBA with these claims that they're going to sort of unify their rules. That's very problematic. There was recently the junior, the youth championships in Spain. Americans, by just parenthetically, did quite well through the beautiful Brawlers program out in California. Has a fantastic program for female athletes. They did very well, medaled well, but but at the same time, IBA pushed out this whole new system of assigning points during the games, during the match, this whole new repping stratagem or a whole new judging stratagem. That's come under fire because the feeling is it went out way too soon. There may not have been the appropriate trainings, and to roll that out very quickly at a tournament of that level, at Worlds, essentially World Youth Tournament, was very problematic. So they continue to make moves that are really subject to a lot of criticism, a lot of questions as to what they're really trying to achieve. As Eddie mentioned, they have this new pro thing. They're going to also have women for the first time. They're going to take the helmets off for women. They're not going to do 3 minutes. They're going to do 2 minutes, 2 times 5, 2 times 7, even though in their amateur program on the elites, they're doing 3 minutes. It's really very, very confusing. And who they're hoping to attract to this is an unknown. It might be a way of funneling in, Russian and Belarusian athletes, athletes from across, as Eddie mentioned, athletes out of Saudi Arabia and UAE. And just as a little parenthetical here, this afternoon or late this afternoon, guess which countries were crowing about how they helped make the deal? UAE. And Saudi Arabia. Right. Well, that was all us. It was really all us.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because they exchanged, right?
Yeah, well, the exchange was in UAE.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's because of our great diplomacy that the Americans and the Russians were able to make this deal, but it's all us.
It had to be in UAE because most European countries aren't taking flights from Russia.
Absolutely right.
So it had to go somewhere not that far from Russia.
Right.
That's exactly. It was a straight shot down from Moscow because that's where they flew her from. They took her out of the penal colony, brought her to Moscow, and took her down. But to where we were before about all of this sports and this kind of the intersection of sports and UAE and Saudi Arabia. We've been talking about this for a while in terms of boxing. Well,
sports washing.
Here we are, even with BG's a release from her horrific imprisonment, but it's, they're also all in on this sports stuff and sports washing. And now that they're apparently in bed with Kremlin and IBA for whatever they're pushing on, it's all
how they can get into boxing. I mean, exactly. I mentioned this before. The head of the Saudi Arabia Boxing Federation, Al Harbi, openly spoke in favor of Kremlin not having another election at the so-called Extraordinary Congress, where they rubber stamped that and refused to have a new election to let Boris Vandervoort stand for election against Kremlin and have a debate also. I think they were more concerned. They didn't want the debate rather than the election because they paid off so many of these federations. It's very likely Kremlin would have won by a landslide anyway. They also never raised the issue of having a new vote for the board of directors, where several candidates with the Common Cause Alliance were also illegally prevented from even running for the board of directors. So Al Harvey is also the guy who was one of the key people that brought the Usyk Joshua fight to Saudi Arabia, and there are plenty of pictures when they had that fight, when they had the pre-fight press conference. There were all the face-off, and there were pictures, which I posted and other people have, of Usyk, Joshua, Eddie Hearn, and Al Harvey. It's the same guy, because you don't have any distinction in a monarchy like that between professional boxing, Olympic, amateur boxing, the government, the corporations, all of that stuff. It's just one big blob, basically controlled under the monarchy. So yeah, that's what they're trying to do, and that's why they're trying to bring some of their boxers to prominence. And how are they going to do it? Well, in real Olympic competition against top level people, it'll be decades before, unless they just buy some athletes and bring them there, which a lot of countries do, before they're able to develop a program of really getting elite boxers. So what you do is you compete on this level, on this small level, and then you could be crowned all sorts of things. And also working with the WBA, this is the one of the boxing's four major sanctioning bodies that has not banned Russian boxers from fighting for their championship belts. So maybe IBA is going to learn from WBA's governance. Maybe if they set up a counter Olympics or something like that, maybe we're going to have a super Olympic champion and a regular Olympic champion and an interim Olympic champion and a Olympic champion and
a junior.
That's ridiculous.
Right, a silver Olympic, all the crap that the WB, the other
South American
bodies,
one,
right,
right,
the Mexican, and who will pay for it? There'll be sanctioning fees.
Right.
Anyway,
WBA, by the way, is moving. I don't know if they finished it. They're actually moving the headquarters to Houston, Texas, so they could be WBA.
Oh, they are out of Mexico?
Yeah, so they might be under a little more scrutiny. Of course, the Texas authorities won't care, particularly the Texas Commission, but and the Texas government of Hay Abbott and those people.
Yeah, but if we have sanctions against Russia, how does that work?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're not. They're that's like they're not a Russian organization, but they're working with IBA, which is run by a Russian.
And they're taking Russian money.
Under the table, I'm sure they are. Yes, but the point is that that was allowed to go on, and that was those were not banned. And Russian athletes are not banned in the United States. And I gave some examples of that in other sports. Not. I mean, the U.S. Tennis Open was in Queens.
Yeah.
The NHL plays all over North America, so I'm assuming a lot of them played in the Garden. I don't really follow hockey, so I don't know who's on which team, but if they're in the NHL, they're playing all over the U.S. and Canada.
That's a shame. That is a shame. All right, well, look, let's move on. Malissa, let's talk about the...
I just want to make a brief mention. Yesterday, the International Boxing Hall of Fame came out with their list of the class of 2023 inductees.
Okay. Am I on that list? No, I'm just kidding.
There are 2 women in the modern category. The great, brilliant, wonderful Alicia Ashley, Slick Ashley. She is awesome. She fought out of, she's Brooklyn, she's Jamaican, started life as a ballet dancer, and then had an injury and then sort of couldn't dance anymore. So took up kickboxing and then was in the first group to box in the United States in 1999 in an elite women's international competition. So she's really awesome.
That's
So
fantastic.
she is in the hall. She's also was the oldest, beating Bernard Hopkins by 1 month, oldest boxing champion with a new belt. She won the WBC super bantamweight at 48, 1 month older than Bernard Hopkins. So she still holds that record in the Guinness Book of Records.
Right on.
I have trained with her. I can tell you she's awesome. She's
right
really awesome.
on.
The second is Laura Serrano. Laura Serrano is was from Mexico City. She used to box on the down low in the 90s. Her first professional fight in the United States was against Christy Martin. Gave her a run for her money. I mean, you can still see the fight on YouTube. She was awesome. She was amazing. And she became an attorney. She is an attorney, Laura Serrano, and she legalized boxing in Mexico.
Nice work.
Just awesome. So she is the second modern woman. So she's this year. And then for the pioneer women, this year's award is posthumous to a woman named Joanne Hagan. Joanne Hagan boxed out of South Bend, Indiana in the early 1950s. Wow. There was this little coterie of boxers, really well-trained boxers out of South Bend, where their trainer's name was Nate. And they used to play in this little circuit on the backside of wrestling cards. You know, sometimes they'd get kicked out of there because they'd say, "What? Women? Get out here." Right. But they would box anyway. And she was a really exceptionally talented fighter, and has the distinction of being the only woman to beat Barbara Buttrick in Canada on the first broadcast female bout in Canada. Was coast to coast on radio. That really exceptional boxer. She also ended up on the Steve Allen show. What? She ended up on American TV talk shows, promoting being a boxer. She was on What's My Line, wrote
I love the Steve Allen show back in the day.
Yeah. So anyway,
Schmuck, remember he used to do that? Schmuck.
Yeah. So anyway, she appeared on American television as a boxer, was quite a phenom, very beautiful, tall, statuesque, 5'7". Ended up having a career in the armed forces after that for 20 years. And she left boxing. But anyway, so she is also recognized, and that's sensational. So couldn't be happier. On the men's side, you got Tim Bradley Jr., Timothy Bradley.
Nice.
Is in the hall, Carl Froch, and one more person whose name I'm forgetting. So I'm sorry, but I'm here to represent women. But
they didn't put Luke King in?
No. But Joe Gosson is in, as a non-boxer. So that's kind of cool.
He was, I wrote you know who Luke King? He's listed in BoxRec as only having a pro record of 0-1 from Paterson, New Jersey. Luke King's real name was Louis Cristello, otherwise known as Lou Costello.
Oh my God, Louis Costello.
No way.
Boxer, and they found on BoxRec an old picture of him as a boxer. You could see he was a young man then. He was in better shape than when he did the TV shows and movies. But there are a lot of people who were boxers back in those days.
Yeah. Listen, George Raft, who was actually a great friend, Lou Costello and George Raft were great friends, and he was a boxer in New York. Oh, Rafael Marquez, he's the other inductee on the men's side. So
when is that induction happening?
That'll be the weekend of June 8th through the 11th. So very, very, very exciting stuff.
Nice.
So I'm just thrilled that it's Alicia. This was the second ballot, so she was on last year for the first time, but she got in this year, and Laura Serrano got in this year. So we're nice. Really thrilled. It was a great decision. Right. So this is the fourth class of women at the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And to plug International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame, Laura Serrano was inducted in 2015. Joanne Hagan was inducted in 2015. And Alicia Ashley was inducted last year in 2021. So
Nice.
I have
Very
had the
nice.
honor of announcing her name. So I couldn't be
Outstanding.
happier.
Right
And
on.
there's also great news from the world of boxing that the WWE announced that they were interested in getting involved in boxing. And I'm sure that whatever boxing they put on will have just as much integrity as the wrestling they put on.
Oh my Lord,
Just
I
shows
can't
you
even
where
imagine.
boxing is headed.
How can you even do that? You know,
Because it's
wrestling,
promotions. It's straight up promotions.
no,
That's it.
but listen, at Gleason's they have this guy Johnny Lodes. He's amazing. He has a wrestling school. So
Johnny Rods is still around.
yeah. I mean, he's anyway. His school is still there, and you watch these guys learning the routines, and it's wonderful to watch at that level. You know, and it's still it's exactly what they do in the WWE, the arm bars, all of this stuff.
Right.
How they go back and forth against the ropes and then do these acrobatic moves. I mean, it's wonderful. You can't do that in boxing.
I can't even imagine a WE
boxing. It is kind of hard to fake boxing.
They tried it with American football with XFL, but that was a failure because people didn't trust them and they didn't position themselves. It just was a horrible, nasty product. And I don't think they own the current XFL, which has had all sorts of financial troubles. But who's gonna really believe them?
I don't know
that it's going to be legit.
All right,
with you,
I won't be believing.
I won't. I can't see.
That's for sure. All right, what else we talking about today, folks? Is that going to be it? We're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's wrap it up. All right, Melissa, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
Okay, so I am on Instagram and Twitter, as long as Twitter's there, at Girl Boxing Now. I am checking out Post because I got approved 2 days ago. I'm posting on Post at Girl Boxing Now. I'm trying out Tribal. I'm not so sure I like it. At Girl Boxing Now. Trying Mastodon. That seems to be the zero of it all. So, and then of course my website is girlboxing.org. And if you're looking for a present,
that's right,
history
folks.
of women's boxing.
That's right,
the gift
folks.
of boxing.
I
so
keep
sweet.
this. That's right. You guys pick up her book on Amazon. That's right.
You can get it on Amazon.
That's right. All right, Eddie, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
Well, I'm still on Twitter. I don't think Twitter is going away anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
As bad as what Musk is doing, it's still basically a hub for sports discussion. The recent baseball winter meetings and all the signings, both the facts and discussion about it, and some of the humorous stuff when John Heyman of the Post and MLB put a typo in where he was talking about Aaron Judge and he called him Arson Judge for about a day. People had a lot of fun with that, and he misstated Judge was. It appears to be headed for the Giants, and within 24 hours he had re-signed with the Yankees. So people had a field day on all of that stuff. The point is that that's where this discussion still takes place, and that may change. It probably will change, but all these other sites, none of them have the traction or even the infrastructure to compete with Twitter at this point, which is unfortunate. So I'm using some of these, but I just don't have the time. I mean, I'm on Post, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Counter Social, I'm on a couple of different servers on Mastodon, although one of them tried to give me a virus. I'm looking around at all these other things. There's a couple of new ones that are out there too. But I only have so much time to do this stuff. So I'm still at NHB News, and we'll keep people up to date if we have to make a whole move away from Twitter. And I just had another Patreon article. You talk about giving gifts. You want to give a gift subscription, subscribe to the No Holds Barred Patreon site at patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. This was a weekend behind the screen. And you read about some of my reviews of what I saw on TV and some of the streaming options that are out there and commentaries on it from the unique no holds barred perspective. And of course, the
Right.
website's still eddiegoldman.com, where you find a list of all my media activities for quite a long time that's on there. So check those things out. And again, subscribe to the Patreon page, support independent journalism. You're not going to find this kind of analysis on all of these corporate owned and controlled
That's
sites
right.
that are out there that are tied into various promoters and networks.
That's right. You guys subscribe to his Patreon page, and you guys make sure you pick up Melissa's book on Amazon. That is A History of Women's Boxing, okay, by Melissa Smith. Now, you guys can find me. I'm trying to get away from Twitter because it's a neo-Nazi platform. And I'm now on Post News at Fight Goddess, on Twitter at Angry Afro Radio, because I am that angry Black woman. And what else? Where else am I? Oh, on Instagram, Fight Goddess Fitness. You guys check out
still using Tribal?
Well, I'm kind of backing away from Tribal because it is too much, Eddie. Like you said, it's like I don't have time to keep. But I feel like Post News is more serious. It's like if it's going to be a competitor for Twitter, Post News is going to be it. There's just more serious journalists on Post News right now. That's where a lot of them flock. So you guys check us out at WAAR Sports. That's WAAR sports.com. Follow us on YouTube. And we'll see. And look at Mr. Who is that? What's that cat's name?
Mr. Sugar Ray.
Hey, Mr. Sugar Ray.
Oh,
Aw, hey, Sugar Ray. He's adorable. Oh, I can't bring my Bella up here right now, but thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Peace, love, and push-ups. Boom.